This podcast is an expression of the personal views and opinions of the hosts and guests, and they do not represent the official stance of the podcast, its sponsors, or affiliated organizations. The podcast may cover topics such as drugs, mental illness, politics, and religion, which can be controversial or sensitive. The podcast does not support any illegal activities and advises listeners to seek help from appropriate professionals for any personal concerns related to these topics. The information provided in the podcast is for general informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for professional advice. Listeners are urged to consult with a qualified healthcare professional for any questions regarding their mental or physical health. The podcast and its creators are not responsible for any loss or harm resulting from the use or reliance on the information provided in the podcast.
Recording.
Turn my mic up.
Let's get it on. Welcome to the Street Stoics Podcast with your hosts, Nate, Jay, and myself, Mike. How you guys doing tonight?
Who's going to say it?
Living the dream. Living the dream.
Yeah.
We're living the dream. I was waiting. I was like, who's going to say it first? Who's going to say it first?
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. Good. Glad to hear it. So with Stoicism, there is a whole bunch of information that you can get out there. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. And then actually finding the information that you want to apply and practice, that can be challenging. So tonight we're going to talk about what our strategies are as far as finding relevant information, useful information, and then our strategies to apply that information into our daily lives.
Nice.
So, Jay, I'll start with you. When you are going with or looking for information, or there's something you want to learn, how do you filter that information and decide what is useful and what's not useful?
When it pertains to Stoicism and information that I'm coming across, and a lot of it is coming across right now through social media. So that's where I kind of have to look at the information, see what it's saying as far as ways of conducting yourself, or kind of what perspective or side of Stoicism this type of information is coming from. I like doing, research, going, online, checking YouTube, looking up videos. And I know that people have been putting up their own information that they've been learning. And you kind of come across it when you see it multiple times in different videos. So that's how I'm picking up. Okay, so everyone's in agreement that this particular thing happened, or this is, a tenet of this. So you start picking on patterns on, repeated information. And from there, you start filtering it down to, okay, so this seems to be a legit thing, and dig in deeper into it by trying to look up more information on it and see if it's actually helpful or beneficial to us. And just from kind of reading some of the stuff and trying to apply it, and ways of kind of being driven by it, in a sense, there's a lot of stuff out there that it is legit. Like, yeah, if you just look at things in that way, things will be better. Things can be better for you daily.
Nice. That's a solid strategy. So Nate, I know you're full of information, and you're always looking for ways to get information. And as far as strategy goes, I know that you're pretty strict in your rituals and where you get information and how you get that information. What's your motivation for sticking and being so disciplined in the information that you're getting and receiving and applying?
So something to just clarify your question, Mike, is are we speaking like just about Stoicism,
Yeah,
like in the research of Stoic
well,
philosophy?
yes, just stoicism.
Okay. Um, Actually, now that I asked you that clarifying question, I realize it doesn't really matter. Um, my side of the
Yeah,
question, not
that
yours.
was my
Yours
nice way of
obviously
saying
matters.
just answer the fucking question.
Right. Um, so I think the motivation is very similar to things that I've talked about or discussed in most of the other episodes, and it's pretty much is just tackling weaknesses, right? When I think about like this process of like vetting information, like first there's the research, and that's because you're motivated. It's something that you're interested in. Like we all share that thing is if we want something bad enough, we're going to get it, right? So, uh, you know, also, thinking about that Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I think a lot of that just speaks to personal bias. And so, like, looking into anything, even if it was a study, there's going to be a bias. And since we're so intrinsically motivated to, find out or get better at whatever the thing is, I think that we're going to apply our own personal bias. Now, do I think that's a bad thing? No, but it also could be. And, like one of the stanzas in the poem, If, we reference it all the time, is, you know, if you can bear to hear the words you've spoken, twist by knaves and make a trap for fools. Right. So, like, that's already talking about like that conflict of bias, right? Like, you're like, oh no, like that, I was speaking the truth and they twisted it into something else. And then, later on, actually, it might be in the beginning where he says something in regards to, um, you know, if you can stay the path, but also listen to the naysayers, right? Like there's some truth in that. And, uh, you know, just for the motivation piece, it's hard to say because I'd like to think that I don't rely on motivation anymore. However, it's almost like I don't rely on any motivation, and at the same time, I only rely on motivation. So, like popular right now, David Goggins, right? He's no music, go to the dark place, find your inner bitch, and all this stuff. That's also intrinsic motivation in a way. So, it's hard for me to say that. And one of my weaknesses is self-analysis. So, like that's exactly how I found stoicism. I was like, how could I improve on my weaknesses? And a quick Google search is like, oh, do reflection and stuff. And you know how Google algorithms rather are phenomenal at their job. That's why they're, making so much money. And that's, I believe, how Stoicism started coming in there. And Ryan Holiday and Jocko Willink and all of those different little things. And so I think my motivation is just to not be who I was yesterday. If that's the only way I could really sum it up.
Right, and that's the basis of stoicism, right?
Right.
I like to take it all back to amor fati. Any
Yeah.
information that you're receiving in that moment, that's your fate. And
Right.
you can decide your fate by filtering that information. And if it's something that you think will help you to apply in your life, amor fati, love your fate. So,
Yep.
excellent.
Well, and then I think before we push on, one note that I was hearing kind of in Jay's response, I think it's phenomenal, and we should highlight this, that Jay was doing it without really realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
But something familiar to Mike and I is Bloom's taxonomy, right? When you start learning about teaching and the adult learning theories and principles, you'll start learning about this thing called Bloom's taxonomy. You'll learn about other things as well. But how Bloom's taxonomy breaks down is basically it's like a pyramid, and at the top you have create, then you have evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, and then remember, right? And I think that's exactly, maybe not to a T, but the path that Jay was talking about when he finds that information. And what Stoicism talks about is you have to put everything up for review,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you have this idea, whether you create it yourself or whether you find that somebody else had created it, you go through those things. You evaluate it first, you judge its value, right? Then you get to the analysis part. And so you're breaking down the information into these smaller, more digestible components. Then once you think you're like, oh, okay, I could maybe apply this, you start applying it. You're testing it. Does this work? Am I doing this right? Does this work? Okay. Then you move on to the understanding, right? Those questions will bring you to the understanding. And then you just implementing them day in and day out, that's how you remember. And, that's why there's those crucial pieces of Stoic philosophy, like Mike just said, amor fati and memento mori. And they're to reinforce that process. We must remember to love our fate, and also remember you must die. So we got to be doing these things quick, right? Because we might not wake up the next day. It's just interesting that I'm listening to Jay pulls a little spiel on, what he does. And, I was able to like boil that down, and holy shit, like he's talking about Blooms, and I'm not even thinking that he even knows what Blooms is, hopefully.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's like the beautiful thing is like, damn, there's this theory or principle out there that's solid, it's known, and it works. And this guy does it on his own.
And all of that has to be done patiently, because when you start finding information out there that supposedly can help you or improve you or make you feel better, it's not going to just happen one time, two times, or three times. You have to continuously keep applying it. That's, you need to have
Mm-hmm.
discipline
Yes.
and patience. You have to do both of those. For me,
Yeah.
I hate waking up early. That's not that I've never functioned on that type of schedule. Like, just growing up, I always used to wake up late. Now I'm forcing myself to wake up early in order to get a walk in the morning, which I hate doing,
Yeah.
but I do it. And
Yes.
I've been just doing it as many times as I can in the mornings. Sometimes I don't do it. Just recently, I was able to get back into my routine of doing it often, because sometimes things happen and my sleep schedule pattern all gets whacked out, and I have to then try to find the steps again and figure out, okay, I have to do this in order to wake up early and then start, my whole day. Because if I don't get that walking in the morning, I wake up and then I'm so confused the rest of the day for work. And that's what's helping me, and that's where I'm recognizing it. So I'm like, okay, this is good. So I know that this information is good. I can apply it, and I can continue applying it because I see the results. I see actual things happening from it. Just like the cold water, either the cold water shower, or sometimes I don't feel like just getting into the shower. I'll just put the faucet on, put all the sink all the way to the top, and just dunk my head in there. It works. it works somehow, even if it's a placebo mental thing, whatever it is.
Yeah,
It's kind of already
it
pretty
does.
much proven by scientists that this actually does work. There's a reaction in us that the shock of the cold water actually provides us like some sort of boost of energy, and it actually does work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just like certain little things like that, I have been
Mm-hmm.
applying it. I come from I come from a Hispanic background, so in the Hispanic culture, we all the meals tend to have either something with tortillas or rice, and that's kind of what's bad for us. Like even us Hispanics, too much of that is not good for us, man. It's
Yeah.
it's that's why a lot of us have a lot of weight issues, man. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I started cutting that out, and I see results. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's sacrifices, right? It's not you you have to understand and know that that type of eating patterns and stuff like that is not good for us. You can't be eating that every day. That's not how the human body's made. You have to understand or know who you are, what your body is, when you are full, what exactly is a good portion for you, how long it's been since your food actually digested properly. All of that needs to be factored in when you think about my next meal and stuff like that. All of that's from studying, finding videos online, doing research, trying to find out, okay, so what does this do to my body if I do this? And honestly, it's one of those things too where I've always found interest in podcasts, and podcasts are very informative, and I've learned a lot just because of podcasts. A lot of I like we've discussed of who we actually like listening to. I mean, it's no secret. I like Joe Rogan. I was listening to his stuff since like 2015 or something, 2014. So um, there was a lot of informative people on there, and I've learned a lot just from listening to some of the information that they've provided, and I've followed some of them out of that podcast and listened to them on other stuff. So there's information out there that's good. You can come across it. There's always somebody else out there that probably has a different opinion or a different perspective of it, and so you listen to that information too. Like right now, there's a lot of people saying that the information that Huberman is saying is not really helpful or beneficial to people. He shouldn't be saying certain things. So it's like you don't take all the information. You always factor it in. You try to apply it yourself. If it works for you, then it works for you. Maybe it doesn't work for you. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody has the same, body composition, the same structure, the same everything. So some things work for some people and some things don't. You just have to figure out what works for you. And I think I figured that out by just kind of figuring out little things here, what helps me. I got to get a certain amount of sleep. If not, I'm not good for the rest of the day. I know now that there's a certain time of the day that I can't drink coffee, because if not, I'm awake late, and it whacks out my schedule. So I'm at that point too where I'm recognizing these things where it's like, I should not do this. Let me cut down on that, and let me start doing this more, and it helps.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it's you were talking about how you're making those sacrifices, cutting that stuff out, and all of that stuff. It's kind of like an addition by subtraction kind of thing. You're improving your life by taking those things away, or uh, adding a new skill, right? That may be difficult for you to do at first, but by putting yourself through learning that new skill, you're improving yourself.
Yeah, it's more of
So
not
that's excellent.
removing. It's more of reducing. Yeah, because I still eat most of that
Reducing,
stuff,
yeah,
but it's not as often as
yeah,
I did. It's like maybe now once a week. If maybe I had it like today, I won't have it again for another couple of days. So I try to mix it up. I kind of switch it up so that I'm not consistent, because there was times when it was like that. It was rice and beans, and some other meat all the time, or it was, you know, a burrito or a taco or just spaghetti, noodles, ramen, and all of that stuff is white flour is bad for us, man.
Oh man. Well, and there is nothing better than going in. Like, I remember my great grandpa, he always had fresh tortillas and a pot of beans whenever you went to his house. And man, there's nothing better. But it's so, like you're saying, it's so, those
Like,
tortillas are
it's
so
like
bad
everything,
for you.
man. What I'm finding out, it has to be in moderation and balance, man. You have to find the
In
balance,
moderation.
even
Right.
for food, man. It's like that for everything in life, man.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that's going into your body,
Right.
you need to find a balance, because too much of it is not good for you.
Right. And so
Yep.
just to clarify for the audience, how does that affect your Stoic journey?
As far as what?
As far as, you know, does it help you in your Stoic journey? Does it make it harder?
It's actually making it easier. Um,
Okay.
I would say, just because of how I got to where I'm at right now, as far as being into Stoicism, having this different perspective of life. When I got into Stoicism, it kind of made things click and make sense as far as what I was feeling. It's like I said, it to me, I'll still call it what I feel it is. It's kind of some sort of awakening where I'm more aware of my presence, my present day. Like, I'm aware that, okay, I'm alive, you know, I'm a human, I'm here existing. Um, you've been wasting a lot of time. Like, you have been just sitting down wasting time. Like, you now need to start doing something for yourself, because all that you've been doing is just thinking about how you want to think, how you want to get things better, how you want things to get better for you, and you're not doing anything. So somehow, when I started going into Stoicism, I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I started applying some of the information, and it started helping me understand better of what I was going through, of just being more present, understanding that the negativity that I had going on in my head wasn't necessary. And so, yeah, I'm happy, dude. I now feel that I can be very chill in a lot of situations, and there are still, you know, moments of frustrations that I find that I can't. And I'm only thinking of incidents with my daughters, but the frustrations. But I feel that that has actually improved me a lot from what I was before. So yes, I definitely feel very positive changes have happened because of practices that I've put into play. Because yeah, it's just been very beneficial to me. I mean, it's only made me now more aware of not needing to react to my first thought, which is always something negative. And so now I'm actually catching myself pausing before I say something that I shouldn't say, or that maybe I don't want to say, but I'm so accustomed to saying it, right, just because that's how I am been programmed.
Mhm.
And now I see myself as more of, you know, the human mind is more like a computer. We've only been programmed by what we've learned as young kids and the repetitive things that we've learned throughout life.
Nice.
Hell
Nice.
yeah. Good.
Nice. Uh, so uh, one thing that I just wanted to kind of pile on with what Jay was saying, and what all of us have been talking about tonight. You're always going to find a reason not to do something, uh, and
Oh yeah.
uh, diving into those hard things, your brain's automatically going to tell you not to do that, right? Um,
Yeah.
and pushing through is the only way you're going to get through it. And Ryan Holiday's said it best in his title of the book. says it best: is the obstacle is the way. Leaning into that obstacle and pushing through that obstacle for sure. So, Nate,
Yeah.
when you are looking in at like your next book that you're going to read, or what you're going to apply to your daily routine, how do you decide what book is going to be most beneficial for you?
I think that's going to be an easy one for me to answer. So, going back to, that Bloom's taxonomy thing, usually there's research before. Like, first of all, does this interest me? Do I see value in it? Then, like, you start to get into it. To be honest, it probably isn't until that like application phase. So I'm like actually reading it that I can tell whether or not it's actually going to be something I'm going to stick to reading versus, maybe I shouldn't waste my time with that. And that was actually really hard for me up until recently, is because, and we've all discussed this off screen before, but none of us that I can recall were readers before, the last 8 years.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like you dabble in some stuff. Like I read a couple of books, but nothing that, I was like, I have to finish this, And so, when I first wanted to pick up the task of reading, or, just learning rather, I whether or not I enjoyed the book or actually saw value in it after reading it, I would finish it either way. And I still struggle with this sometimes now, just because I don't want to put it down because I dislike it. And then I'm like in this dichotomy thought of, okay, I should be able to take something away from this anyways. Also, if I don't live tomorrow, then I wasted my time with this thing that I'm not really getting anything from right now. And so in the moment, I'll actually just pause on the book and I'll have to digest it, because it strikes an emotion. That dichotomous thought strikes an emotion. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to put emotions aside to be able to make a decision. And just like time is the best enemy against anger, I kind of give it time, and I think like, okay, let's review what I've already read so far. Did I actually take something away? Did I miss something? And if I do that and I didn't miss anything and I didn't take anything away, unfortunately, at that time, I couldn't learn anything from that, and I'll accept that failure. I'll put that book down and I'll be looking for another one. And, in the beginning that took some time. Now I have a want list for books, or a reading list, right? Like of things that I haven't done yet. And I think it's like over 100 books that I haven't even touched yet. And I think things that I've actually been through is somewhere in only like the 20s to the 40s. I can't remember, so I don't want to say the wrong number, but it's relatively low. And the reason is because when I do find that book, I tend to take my time with it and really try to apply it, because a lot of the times when we say something doesn't work, it's because we haven't mastered that thing. And so really it's not the something that didn't work, it's us that didn't work. And I'd really like to master some of the principles before I'm able to say whether or not it worked. And so I do that with concepts that I find, because a lot of the stuff that I read is, like improvement on leadership, philosophy, whatever. And so like I really strive to apply those, and, like kind of really make sure I have it down before I allow my own mind or myself to say that was no good. And so, in a nutshell, to answer that question, Mike, sometimes you just got to start reading. You know, you think it looks good, it sounds good, it's got great reviews from the people that you care about, and you know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You can always come back to it if you get another day. It's not like those things leave my list; they'll always be on there. But you know, use your time wisely. You know, like we were talking about amor fati earlier. It's just remember memento mori as well.
Mm-hmm.
Don't waste your time,
For sure.
like Jay was saying.
That's the one thing. That's the one thing that whenever I see someone spending or hearing about somebody spending too much time in one thing and just wasting away, a lot of the time on that, I'm just like, damn, they don't even realize how much time they're just wasting away right now. And that's it. Like they'll never
Right.
get that back. And they never did anything in that moment to try to improve themselves in any way. And then they question why they have all these issues. And you're just like, I'm, I'm right here. I'm looking at that, but you're not aware of it yourself. You don't see it in yourself. You don't realize
Right.
that you're doing this and that's causing this. And because of this, you have these issues. It's an odd thing. Like I was trying to explain that earlier, that
Right.
I see this type of stuff now when I look at people and why they'll question something, and I'm just like, yeah, it's you haven't looked within yourself to figure out that answer because you're just wasting away time. You're doing all these other things that you're just too busy wasting away on. And that's now
Man.
something like one of the things that I've now applied, which I guess maybe I've done actually the reverse. I've removed things that I feel that were I was wasting time on. Things like it's weird. Like I love podcasts, but there were certain podcasts that I was just spending too much time every week just watching. I mean, I love comedy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sorry,
Yep.
the goofy silliness of certain podcasts, but it it wasn't helping me improve. Yeah, there's now a sense in my mind of just I need to just consume anything that helps me get better, proactive, just improve me into learning and doing something where I feel I'm accomplishing things. And I've let go a lot of things, like just time doing that, time watching. I'm a big fan of wrestling. I mean, even until like just recently, and completely stopped. I just haven't even paid attention to anything recently. Um, you can ask me what show has come out on TV recently, and I, I, dude, I don't sit down in front of the couch anymore. If anything, I'm sitting here on this chair, just doing something, trying to figure out something, editing the podcast or working on my stuff back there on the table. I'm doing more of what I wanted to do when I was over there sitting down watching TV for hours after, I got out of work. So I that's whatever I can do to preserve that is what I'm going to do and to try to improve it. So that's where I feel I'm at now, where I'm removing things. I'm not like I even just recently started getting out of certain group chats that I'm in and trying to mute people that keep sending me information or just random memes because it's a distraction. Like
Yeah.
those type of things are time wasters. I'm well aware of that. I'm well aware of the time that I'm spending on social media, resharing something or posting something. I'm in those moments I always come back to how much time have you just wasted away? And then boom, that's it. The phone goes off and I go back to whatever it is that I need to do. So it's constantly in repeat. Don't waste time. Don't waste time. You're wasting time. You're wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think something that I thought of is like when people talk about the difference between madness and obsession,
Ooh.
right? So madness is when you do something over and over and you're not sure why,
Yeah.
right? You don't get anything out of it. And obsession is you're obsessed with this thing because of the benefits, because of the things you get out of it. And so that'd be that. I wish we would have started with that, but that's kind of exactly what we're speaking of here. Is like Jay with those things that he's eliminating, myself with the books from the question from Mike, is it's mad of us to be doing those things without benefit, or without our hearts being in it, whatever you want to call that. But like Stoicism and the Stoic philosophy, the thing that we're doing now, that's an obsession. And like all three of us share that same characteristic. Is Stoic philosophy may be the one thing we have in common, but the other thing is probably even in the forefront is obsession about those things that push us forward to get better. And each one of us has something different that we're obsessed about. Like I know Mike loves sports. I know Jay loves that art stuff, and I don't know what I love. I love teaching, I think, but like it's that that thing, and we just keep doing it over and over because of its benefits.
Yeah. And I can attest that Nate loves teaching. So this new project we've got him working on, he's just like a little 5-year-old boy in a toy store.
Yep. It's probably my most unstoic time.
Right.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, so right now, I have been for several months reading a page out of Meditations every day. And so the reason I do that way is because I don't know if I don't know if you guys have sat down and tried to read Meditations, but it's a lot. Like there's it's a pretty dry read. So I tried to read it just like I normally would. I'm like, I'm not going to get anything out of this.
I'm sitting here because of that book.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So,
We probably all are.
So when you guys, what is a strategy that you guys have when you have recognized, okay, like this is really good information. However, I need to digest this, and I need to know how, like, think about how I'm going to apply this, and how does this benefit me? So, question for both of you is, what is, when you recognize that, what is your strategy to combat that overload of information and helping yourself digest that information?
Ooh, that's solid.
You go first.
Either one, I don't care. Go
Who's
first.
Going first, Jay. Me go first. Okay. So I'm glad because I'm chomping at the bits now.
Yeah.
So especially for something like meditations or anything for that matter, because like I also got Mike the what's that book, Mike, from Jocko?
Discipline is
equals
freedom.
freedom, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so both of those books I could just dive into hard. However, I'm going to miss a lot of information. It does, strike emotion. You get excited and you're happy and all these things, and you're hungry, and your dopamine kicks in. It's the doer hormone, and a lot of the times when that happens, I noticed that I would lose stuff. It would get diluted, and so I think one of the main reasons that I keep referencing that poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling is it's probably one of the shortest things that I've ever read, and one of the most life-changing things that I've ever read because of how I went about it. So initially, like I've said before, I heard it from Jocko, and then I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But it was only one stanza that stuck out to me, which I probably talked about in another episode. But I thought like I knew what it meant. Maybe, I don't know. The first thing was it was just deep. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. It was almost like there was this little inner voice inside my head that was like, you need this right now. You need to understand that. And it wasn't until later that I heard my own voice saying, you need to understand that. And so I spent, I don't know, a few days trying to figure out what that meant to me. And as soon as I had an idea of what I thought it meant to me, I started testing it, and I just randomly would ask family and friends. And then I got ballsy enough because I was so hungry to find out what just that one stanza meant. I would ask random people. I would say, hey, look, I'm going to give you this thing. It's not a joke. There's no trick. There's no right answer or wrong answer. I just want to know what you think it means. And as long as I prefaced it that way, I would tell them, hey, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. And I got tons of people telling me what it meant to them. And I got to see all these different perspectives. And it's like, okay, now I have to remember these perspectives and digest it. And how does it influence my idea of what it was? And what I realized is it influenced me as they were more tools for the job. Okay, so like in this, set of circumstances, it might mean this. And then, or in this light, it might mean this, because they were everybody's different realities. And that's basically what I was asking for. And, after I finally thought that I had an okay understanding, because to this day, I still don't think I fully understand it, I moved on to the next piece that stuck out to me. And what's interesting is when I read the poem all the way through again, something else stuck out. And then I did the same thing with that piece, and the same thing with the next, and the same thing with the next, until I went through the entire poem. And it probably took me about a year for that short poem for me to really digest everything within it and figure out what it meant to me. How do you apply that to life? Because I didn't move on to the next stanza until I had gone through the entire process. And so, I think it helps that I have tester's anxiety, because when you're going through school and you have test anxiety, they have you, like if you're reading a problem, they have you cover up a bunch of stuff so you can only see small little bits at a time, because your brain starts to, think about what it previously said and what it's about to say and do all this thing, and you need to focus. And so I guess that's what I just applied to reading. Luckily, there were some teachers that helped me with that, and actually family members too. And that's how I digest a lot of stuff. And I think, Mike, we were talking about other books, right? And how, it's good, like, that was amazing. Now, I used to think books were precious and I didn't write in them. I'm highlighting, sticky note, stars, whatever. And it's like, I'm going to stay there. I'm not going to move forward from this until I fully grasp that. And then I'll continue reading, because then I feel like I actually understand the book. I didn't just read it. I understand it because I went through that process. I applied it.
Good approach. That's a good approach, because
Solid.
I definitely don't
Yeah,
follow that at all. I mean,
for sure.
and I'm probably at that point where you were before, where I'm just reading stuff and I'll retain it for some time, but yeah, I'll read it through, and I think some of the things I'm noticing now is like, when I read books like that and then I don't retain the information, is because the whole time I was just trying to finish the book. That was my focus, trying to read to finish the book instead of reading the book to understand exactly what I'm reading, and just taking my time with it and just being patient with it regardless of how long it takes. And I'm doing that with certain books now where I'm just like, okay, like I remember, I retain the information. I might read it like once or twice just because I forgot one time, so I'll read it again. I'm like, okay, now I remember, and then it retains after a few times of reading it. So it's a different way of going about it, and I now understand how it can actually work, like you were describing it. So I've done it once or twice, and yeah, it's I understand it works. So I might actually start applying that one. Now that's how things that's how things are. That's how things come across
Yeah.
in everything, right? You learn something from someone else that they're doing it a different way that's helping them, and you're like, maybe let me try it. And that's all it takes. Just try it out, see if it works, do it a few times, be patient with it, and then maybe it sticks, and then it's like normal. You're like, oh, this is the way I should have been doing things before. And that's how we learn. That's how we find out information sometimes, because we didn't learn it initially, and we can't get upset.
Yeah.
We can't get upset when somebody doesn't know that
Sorry,
information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm laughing not at what you're saying or you, but what we're talking about and how we process that information. It's funny because we get stuck in these processes because they seem task specific. And what I learned through the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi is that you can learn how to apply anything to everything. And so the process that we're talking about in finding what books to read or what philosophy or how to digest it and all those things, you literally just articulated that as learning how someone else learns.
Mm-hmm.
You heard this idea, somebody learns better or faster this way, and so we don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? Like that's a whole thing about having the history before us and why we're learning from ancient philosophy. And so somebody else says, oh, this is what I do for reading, and you're like, oh, then I can hear that and test it. You're literally going through the same process, applying the process.
The way
so
of
it's
the
like
warrior.
Inception of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
I now fancy myself a samurai, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
the correlation there of topics.
I know for myself, like I have, I kind of have a system down with, because just like you guys, reading is one of those things that I have never enjoyed ever. And so when I first started getting into Stoicism, after Nate was reciting all those stanzas from If, um, that was the first book I bought. Was that it was his biography written by Chris Brentley, and so I just dived into it, and that started a chain reaction. So I usually will start a book on Audible, and then especially Ryan Holiday stuff. And what I really appreciate about Ryan Holiday stuff is that after each book, he gives you a list of books that you could read that would be beneficial for Stoicism. So the more information you find, the more it leads into other information.
Yeah.
And so once I get done reading to that book on Audible, I'll then buy the hard copy, so then I can reference that book later. It's here. I don't have to go rewind through Audible and look for the information that I'm looking for. So, all different perspectives, all different strategies, but they certainly do. They work, and we can learn from each other. And that's why we're talking about what we're talking about today. So,
Yeah, I got a question for you, man.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty good on just bringing this to a close. But I think we need to ask you a question, because you've been asking us questions all this episode. So I got one to conclude this, man.
All right.
So
What you got?
From the past episodes, hearing some of the information that you've provided as far as your personal background and some of the stuff that has happened to you in the past and the way that you've grew up being, how has Stoicism helped you in your thought process, from who you were before with the negative thoughts, maybe in the self-doubt, to what you find yourself now, and how you feel mentally as far as just your day-to-day and your thought process throughout the day?
Ooh. Uh, so I'll sum it up in one word, and then I'll explain a little bit. So just to sum it up, curiosity. Uh, Stoicism keeps me curious, and I can see Nate rolling his eyes because we use that term all the time at work. Uh, but it's true. Um, Staying curious about myself, right? So what are the areas that I need to where can I improve? We all have areas that we can improve, and like Ryan Holiday's book, "Ego is the Enemy," right? Our ego is going to get in the way of that, and saying that, oh, I'm already good, right? And then to even drive the curiosity point home even farther is like, where can I get that information uh, to help me improve myself? Is that asking a friend? Is that uh, finding a new book, reading an article online, and then even to drive that curiosity point, like how is that being curious of like, okay, like is what I'm hearing or am I reading, or is this something that's one going to be beneficial? Two, is it bullshit? Uh, and three, how can I apply it? Um, so just Stoicism helps me. It is my drive to want to get better. It's my drive for wanting to find out information, and leaning into those things that I don't necessarily like doing. Um, part of my reading daily reading routine is reading, and I do most of my reading, like a majority of my pages come from an autobiography or a biography. Um, and typically, what I like to do is pick an autobiography of somebody that I disagree with. Right now, I'm reading a book called shit. What is it called? In the Blink of an Eye. It's a book about Muhammad Abdul Rahim Rauf. He was a basketball player. Played for Louisiana State, LSU, and then he got drafted by the Nuggets. And when he was drafted by the Nuggets, uh, he made a big stink because, well, he became a Muslim, and then he decided that he was going to not stand for the national anthem. Basically, he was Colin Kaepernick before Colin Kaepernick was a thing. But it was in the 90s, so it wasn't like social media wasn't around, so it wasn't nearly as publicized. And for those of you who don't know me, I am very much, I appreciate everything that veterans have done for me so I can live in a free country, and so that people have the right not to stand for the national anthem. And so I stand for the national anthem, but I want to know what was his driving purpose. I want to know, why did he feel like he needed to take that stand? I want to know what kept him honest and why did he think that was so important? Right? So I can learn something from that, from somebody that I disagree with, and be curious about how I can apply not necessarily his points of view, but the methods that he uses to drive and hold on to what he believes in. I can learn something from that, and I don't agree with him. So curiosity, man. That's what Stoicism does for me. Anyway,
That's good to hear,
keeps
man.
me
I'm
curious.
happy to hear that. And that's good. I like that whole approach.
Yeah.
I feel that that's actually a thing that we are losing in this day and age where people are not wanting to hear the perspective of
Right.
the opposing, the opposing side, the person who has that different perspective, that different opinion that comes from a whole different background that says, I don't agree with you. And they just see them as the enemy just because, oh, he doesn't agree with me. It's like, no,
Right.
your perspective is your single perspective. Like, just because you see it one way does not mean that it's right all the way around, because to somebody else it it does not add up,
Right.
because somebody else lived with a whole different way of viewing this.
That makes me think of I don't know that it was necessarily a meme, but a picture that somebody sent me on Instagram one time. Uh, we realized that in a conversation about something that we were kind of disagreeing, and we weren't arguing by any means. More or less, we were arguing our points, but it wasn't. We had no animosity towards each other or anything. And finally, he sends me this photo, and it's two stick figures, and they're pointing at a number on the ground. And you don't know the actual number, but from one side, the number appears to be a 6, and from the other side, it appears to be a 9, right? And so in the picture they're arguing, it's a 6, no, it's a 9. Well, technically, from each side, they're both right? And that's why those movies like Dances with Wolves and the original Avatar, because I haven't seen the second one, don't hate me. Um, they make sense and people love it, is because, like, Jay was talking about opposing views, and oftentimes we get stuck into this good and bad. It's like, is it good and bad, or are they just different? And usually it's the person who learns about the opposing view of the other person and all those things that ends up understanding, and then they quote unquote switch sides. And I don't like to think of it as switching sides. I think of it as broadening the horizons. Both
Yeah.
horizons are now have intersected, and now we have a bigger understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Just there's some fixed mindset that leads people to believe that people switch sides.
I
Mm-hmm.
definitely understand
For
that
sure.
sentiment, as far as that whole just nonsense of, oh, you changed, you become someone else, like you you're one of them kind of like mindset. Like uh it's I've heard that before, in a sense,
Right.
in not
Yeah.
those specific words, but I've gotten the vibe from some of the conversations that I've heard, and I'm like, I've learned, like, I've gone out there, I've been to different places, I've talked to
Yeah.
different people, I've actually come across people from like just different areas, and I've actually asked questions like, what was it like growing up where you were from, like what was normal to you, and stuff like that. And to hear the differences that everyone has lived throughout this life in
Yeah.
all different parts of this country, it's just like eye opening, because it puts me into a different, perspective of like, not everything has to be the way that I thought that life should be because of the area that I grew up in. That's just the environment. You
Mm-hmm.
live that way because of your environment.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it,
Right.
change your environment. And that's what I've done. That's why I move around. I like experiencing different environments. I mean, I know that I have a unique thing about me that is that I've built that for myself, right? Where I've been able to move around if I wanted to or if I needed to, and it hasn't just been out of just free will. It's been because of necessity, because there isn't enough work here, but I am open to go somewhere else, and I've jumped and I've done it, and I've learned from those instances of going to these different places and learn differences in perspective. And I love how we can end this podcast again talking about perspective. And that's the one thing that I think Stoicism has definitely helped me
Mm-hmm.
in understanding and in learning and appreciating that we're all individuals and we all have our own perspective in life. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're all right. And on that note, we'll tune in. Hopefully, you guys tune in next week and keep on listening. Anything else from you guys?
Stay curious. Just stay curious.
That's all we got to do in life. Stay curious.
Yep. Hold fast.
Peace.
Later.